will communicate?
Well, texting is interesting because it fills a gap between different forms of communication, and that's the way I use it too. And so, at one end of the scale you have snail mail, which has a week or more turnaround time. And then the other end is a direct phone call. And text messages are nice because they fall in between the phone call and, say, the email. So, because the email has a one-day turnaround time, approximately, and a telephone call is immediate, and so the text works really well for that. And I do know I get into situations where I'm texting and I realize that I'm not in the right medium and that I need to move either into email for a more elaborate discussion that way, or switch to a phone conversation. And that often happens. I'm trying to make plans with someone with text messages. Sometimes it seems texting is great, that is the perfect medium for that particular situation, but then you get into the situation and you realize, no, it requires a phone call. And so I think it's really important for users to understand when texts work and when they don't work. And I avoided text for a long time. I didn't think it was necessary because I had email on the one hand and telephone on the other. And then as the younger generations began using text, I thought, oh, texting, I don't need that. I've got email, I've got a telephone call. Why not just use a telephone? But as soon as I started using it, I realized, no, there are all these situations where the perfect medium is a text message. So, I'm not so sure that I'm not so sure that the medium determines how people use it. I think that the medium has to adapt itself to what users want. And I think texting has adapted itself to, or people's use of texting has adapted itself to their needs. And I would locate that need between something like an email and a telephone call. Okay, so it's quick and easy, and it's not anonymous, but it doesn't require face-to-face or voice-to-voice communication. So for making quick plans or for just sending information, it works really great. There are lots of situations where you don't want that direct contact with someone because it's complicated. And I know I'm not dating, but I know for dating and for dealing with the opposite sex in a sort of dating situation, texting works really great because it allows people to connect without making the commitment to an actual contact. So I think people really use text to negotiate very complex social relationships, or they can use it just to simplify their communication process and make it quick and easy and knock it into a conversation. And I want to find out how my brother did in a bike race. I don't want to get into a conversation with him about it necessarily. I just want to know how he did. And so I'll send a quick text, how'd the race go? And he'll say, it was at the back of the pack. So then later we can have a conversation about it. But it's just, it seems to me it's a quick and easy way to make contact with someone without actually making all kinds of commitments to various, just have to get that up. Yeah, so yes, there is human adaptation to the limits of the technology, but I think also people push the technologies in ways that are unexpected, and that they will adapt the technologies to their needs, which is what emoticons are about. I mean, emoticons weren't given to us by some system in order to make our communication better. Emoticons are a way for people to overcome the limitations, or even just acknowledge the limitations of that particular medium. And the limitation is you don't have gesture, you don't have voice, you can't modulate your communication in order to get the emotional side of the message across. And so people have adopted emoticons as a way to adapt to that. And yeah, a smiley face or a frown can work to express a particular emotion, but I think mostly what's going on in those situations is that people are saying there are emotional complexities to this message, and I'm acknowledging that there are emotional complexities to this message, so please don't take it at face value. So I think an emoticon is almost just a cue for us to read a little bit deeper into the message or not take it at face value as much as they indicate a particular emotion. It's, I think, just a general acknowledgement of the limits of this particular message. So I think they're really useful, and I find it fascinating the way people have adopted emoticons and adapted emoticons. I don't use emoticons particularly in text messaging. I'll just switch to the phone, as you say. Yes, follow-up phone conversations are crucial sometimes when people come up to the limits of that particular medium and need to push beyond it. Then the smart thing to do is to to switch to the other medium, which in most cases a phone call, or on the other hand an email where a more elaborate conversation can take place. I don't know if it cultivates new relationships. I just think that we have the human need to build these relationships, and we use whatever tools are at hand. And then I think people are really good about taking these particular tools and adapting them to their needs. Right, yeah. So I think that texting, like emails and telephones, are used to facilitate our interpersonal connections that we make across a number of media, including face-to-face, family relationships, emotional relationships, those sorts of things. And so texting is just one tool in order to maintain those connections. I think it's a particularly weak tool. I think it's a very limited tool. But again, it has its advantages. Its limits become its advantage in a certain sense, is that yes, it doesn't allow for emotional complications.